Hey, what's up guys? Frosty here with part 2 of my 25NL session review of Karen's apps. As you can see, I've been having some fun with this webcam. I don't know if it's going to be completely distracting or if you guys are going to like it. So let me know what you think so I know what to do for future videos. I know this patch looks slightly ridiculous on my hat, but if you guys were paying me money, I would probably wear a patch of your face on my head too. Anyways, if you haven't checked out part 1, you can go ahead and do that. It's not going to be imperative to follow the action as we are going to be in completely new spots. But if you do like part 2, you're going to like part 1 because it's just more of the same. With that said, I want to keep this intro brief because we have quite a bit of footage to get through. I'm going to try not to pause it that much, but there are a few spots that are worth pausing for, I think. If you remember last time, we left off on table 2 in the top right here. With pocket kings, where we end up stacking our opponent who played pocket queens in a really weird way, kind of turned his hand into a bluff, but Hero played the hand perfectly in my opinion. 8-9 off I think is an open on table 4. I'm not gonna like harp on these opens because they do come up a lot, but I think they're worth mentioning because I think opening too tight in late position is probably a pretty common leak from a lot of micro stakes players, and it can be hard to tell what's an open and what's not. I think I mentioned this briefly in part 1, but if you want to know, say you want to open like 40% of buttons or whatever you want to open, there are poker programs that are free and very helpful where you can literally just type in 40 and it'll show you the top 40% of hands to open. And you know, you can adjust what's in that hand range based on if you want to open more suited playable stuff and whatnot, but it gives you a pretty good idea of a precise way to do it. And it's also just good to practice with these numbers because you know, then you start to realize what falls into what percentage. Not that people are always opening or 3-betting like the top percentage of hands, but still it gives you at least an idea. And then when you see somebody opening, say 15% from the small blind, I mean 3-betting like 15% or like 25%, you have a pretty good idea of what those extra hands are. So with that, I said I wasn't going to pause much, and I just paused for a couple minutes or a minute, so that's not good. But anyways, I also talked about that hand on table 1 there, where I think 3-betting or flatty is fine, and it looked like that guy folded to a decent amount of 3-bets, so I think I do just like 3-betting there, trying to win it pre-flop. We just folded 10-9 suited under the gun. I think it's a fine fold because the table does appear to be all regs. But even then, I think it could be an open. It's good for board coverage to open these suited connectors sometimes. And keep in mind, you're going to be playing with a pretty strong perceived range because you are opening from under the gun with a tricky disguised hand, which is pretty much always a good thing. Hero messaged me after watching part 1 and said he liked it. He said he thought he was playing quite nitty, and he was telling me that he went through like a rough patch recently where he seemed to be opening and people were playing back at him a ton, so he kind of changed his game plan. Well, there's going to be an interesting spot on table 4. I'm just going to pause it for a sec, but let me finish my thought. He said that he was going to play a strategy where he played quite tight until he accumulated more stats on villains and then adjust accordingly and, you know, open where people weren't defending enough, 3-bet where people were folding too much, etc., which I think is reasonable and logical for sure. But I think I'd like 20, I think I like micro stakes, cash games, I think I would probably start by doing the opposite and just kind of err on the side of opening too loose and 3-betting too light. Like I wouldn't go crazy. I would just stick to what I think is reasonable against complete unknowns because I think the average reg won't defend enough. They won't be aggressive enough in late position, and they just won't play great post flop anyways. So that's kind of how I would go about it. And then as I got more stats, I would play in a more exploitative fashion. Anyways, back to table 4 here. We are going to check, and we are going to get a bet out of villain, and our hero is going to type something completely standard on table 3 there to call and then just fold. Hero is going to tell us that he was going for a check raise, and then villain bet pot, and he kind of backed out of it, which I think is reasonable. I think once villain goes pot here, let's just back that up. I think that once villain goes pot here, he's going to be fairly value heavy. There's not too many draws on that board to begin with. There's like 9, 10, 5, 6, I mean 6, 7, or maybe queen 10 or something like that. But we blocked 9, 10, which is not good. He might just be doing this with the overs, but I don't know. It seemed kind of weird. I would kind of assume he's maybe value heavy, even though there's not too much value he could have on that board. I think what I would do here is just bet. I think we can bet for value. I think we certainly can get called by worse. All those draws that I just mentioned are probably calling. 8x is probably calling. I don't see 8x or 5x folding to one bet. Probably doesn't have a lot of them, but if they're suited, I think he's calling there on the button probably. He might even just float with overcards. So yeah, I think we can just go ahead and put that into our value betting range. I don't think I would have a check raising range on this board too often, even though there are some draws we can rep, I guess, as bluffs. I think that when you look at the value combos on that board, there's just not too many. I mean, we have all the sets, and we might have Jack 8 suited, and we have overpairs. So I mean, you could construct a check raising range on this flop. I think it would be okay. But yeah, doing it with this hand really kind of over reps our hand. Like, I understand why Hero wants to do it, because there will be a lot of awkward turn cards, and it's a pretty tough hand to play on future streets. So I think he's just trying to take the pot down now. I think against a player who bets when check 2 a ton, that's a reasonable strategy. But I think in general, it's probably just going to be better to bet this and not over rep your hand. And also, because it is so dry and we're repping quite thin, I don't think we're going to get like many folds if he does have like Jack X, and then we're just going to, I mean, it's going to be awkward on the turn, but I think if we want to do like a one and done strategy and then just check fold the turn, then it's okay. But yeah, I think this hand plays just fine by betting. I'm not going to try to go into that much detail on every hand, but like I said, there are a few spots that are probably worth pausing for. Um, 10-6 suited, I think it's too loose to open the cutoff. I'd probably go as loose as 10-8 suited or 10-9 suited, just quite a bit more playability. You can call 3-bets with those hands, whereas if you don't really want to call a 3-bet with 10-6, it's not quite connected enough. Ace-Jack suited on table 3 there. Could be, if he opened there, it could be a 3-bet, it could be a flat for value. Sort of depends on the player. Like, if a player that plays a real raise or fold strategy open there, I'd pretty much be flatting every time. I just wouldn't want to be 4-bet by them, unless they were like crazy aggressive. Then I wouldn't mind stacking off with it, I guess. King 9 suited on table 2 there should be an open, I think, for most players. I think folding, I mean, we got regs behind, but I think folding is just a little bit too tight there. But as I was saying with the ace-jack suited there, if the guy opened the small blind, if we're up against a player who calls a lot of 3-bets, or just doesn't 4-bet very often, I'd be happy to 3-bet that hand for value and expect to get called by a whole lot worse. Good ISO on table 4 with king 10 off. I usually make it at least 4x, just for straight up value, but I don't mind. 3x is just preference. We check the flop. I think it's fine, just because I think there's like a ton of pocket pairs in this guy's limping range, and he's just not folding. But I think there's a lot more stuff than that too. I think there's lots of ace-x. There's Broadway hands that are actually ahead of us, like king queen. There's lots of random middling connectors, even offsuit connectors that they could have that have okay equity against us. So I think I'd probably just stab bet here. I'm not worried about balancing my range or anything like that. I think I'm just betting straight up for fold equity. We may or may not have the best hand. I'd rather just stab and you kind of accomplish two things. You win the pot a lot, and if he calls, you at least get to realize your equity almost always. Because if you bet here and he calls, you can just check back the turn and you see a river almost always. So you do realize your equity that way. Also, it's nice if you turn a pair, you can actually bet again for value. But yeah, I think a check back's okay on this board for sure. we're essentially just giving up. Yeah, I don't think there's much of a point. I think I just take showdown at this point. I'm not even sure ace high folds. He has pocket nine, so we definitely would have lost money there. I don't think he would have folded at any point. We opened ace king and we c-bet. I think that's good. I think I'm just c-betting there pretty much straight up for value. He checks the turn again. I think we could bet again, but it might be a little bit too thin at that point. I mean, obviously he's never folding a pair. So we have the nut no pair hand. I think I'd prefer to just take showdown. The problem with that though is that it gets a little bit tough on some rivers if he bets, because I would expect him to bet like all his misdraws. There's not a ton. There's like 8-9. There's like Jack 8, Jack 9, I guess. Those all might just those all would likely bet the river as a bluff, and then we're kind of in a tough spot where it's a little bit similar to the isolating hand, where if we bet the turn we can take free showdown almost always. But I think he's, I don't know. I think there are some hands that we beat that he just might take showdown with himself. Like he might even just like other ace-x obviously, but he might just even like want to see showdown with like king queen and not bluff those hands. So I think it's fine if we just check back and try to take showdown. Because of course he's going to be betting like a 10 a lot too. He's actually going to have a pair quite often. And that works out pretty much perfectly for us. The 10-2 suited on table 3, there's close. I don't mind a fold. A little bit better, and I think it's an open. Obvious open with ace queen. 6-8 is probably just outside of my opening range. Looks like it doesn't matter. Here seems to be contemplating something here. Don't do it. I don't know what he's thinking with the 8-6 there. Yeah. Not worth the 3-bet. I mean, if you're 3-betting that as a bluff, you're just 3-betting too much stuff as a bluff. I'd rather just bluff with stuff that at least has better flop playability, like even like 8-6 suited. So it's interesting that hero opens 10-6 off. I think it's fine. I think it's close. It's a little bit outside of my opening range, to be honest, but like probably literally by one card. I'm probably opening 10-7 every time. So I think it's fine. I would rather err on the looser side of these small stakes. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'd probably aim to open like at least 70% at these stakes. So yeah, I think that's probably a fine open. When you move up and players become just more aggressive out of the blinds, then you either have to choose what opponents you're opening up against, or probably just open a little bit less in general. Because when you start opening the really trashy stuff, it's just so hard to defend. There's just not enough hands that want to defend. Yeah, we call it pocket ace there. It looks pretty standard. Getting a great price on it. Don't really see the point of 3-betting. We see 4 ways, and I'm just giving up. Even if we have the best hand, like there's so many draws that have equity. I'm gonna pause it. Well, I'll let it run a little bit more. Table 3 is gonna become quite interesting. Ace 9 suited there on table 1 is probably an open. So we go for the check raise. I mean, it's interesting. You can have a check raising range on this flop. It's kind of similar to the spot before with pocket 9s on table 4, where we were going to go for a check raise and villain potted it, and we decided not to. It's sort of similar in that we can't really rep a lot of value. Like, we don't ever have like 10-4 or like 9-4. I don't think we're defending those, even if they're suited. So all we have really for value here is all the sets and 10-9. And maybe not even 10-9 offsuit, although I think it'd be fine to defend that. So we're kind of repping not a lot of value. Like, we never have overpairs here, obviously, so it's sort of even. I mean, we're even repping. I think it's even probably probably a worse spot to check raise than the earlier hand, where we at least have all overpairs in our range. I think we're just repping so thin here that villain's probably going to put us on a lot of draws, because we do have quite a few draws. We have like Queen Jack, 7-8. We might be doing this with like King Jack, King Queen. It's a lot of combos of draws, so I would pretty much never expect our villain to fold any pair to this check raise. So I think I would rather probably construct a turn check raising range here, where depending on the turn, we can probably rep a lot more value. Like, I don't know, if the turn comes like a 7 and 8, even like a jack and stuff, there's just like so much more value we can rep with the check raise. And also, when we check raise here, and like I said, I don't think villain is ever folding a draw, but they would likely double barrel draws on a lot of turns, and depending on the turn card, we could check raise the turn, and a lot of those draws probably fold. Like, there are definitely some bad cards that I probably wouldn't check raise, like a queen or a king maybe, because that would likely give our villain like a pair and a draw, and I just wouldn't expect them to fold. But if it bricks out, I think we can go for a check raise, probably rep more value, and get a lot of better draws than we have to actually fold. So that's kind of my thought process there. Villain's gonna call, and we see the 5 of hearts on the turn. I think as played, nothing to do but bet again. Like, there's a reasonable chance some draws will fold this turn, and we just have enough equity to just straight up bet ourselves anyways. Maybe not enough equity, but we have some equity. Yeah, I'm not really sure what draws fold the turn there. Like, I don't know if Queen Jack folds, but I think like King Queen, King Jack, those gut shot draws probably just fold. So we have that going for us. I still don't really expect like a pair to fold very often, but you never know. He might give up with like 9x. So this is interesting. Now, I mean, we get ourselves into some trouble by check raising the flop like this, but it's a risky triple, but I think we need to triple this. Like, I think we have to realize that the villain has quite a large percentage of his range that is just always calling this turn, and then just has to fold the river. Like, if he's calling turn with like any straight draw, maybe backdoor flush draw. Well, obviously the backdoor flush draw got there, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. If he's calling this turn with any straight draw, he's just got to straight up fold the river. Like, nobody's going to hero with Queen Jack. So that said, it's risky because I think because all the draws missed, there's no way villain's going to fold a pair. So if we bet and he is paired, like, we just lose. But I think there is a decent percentage of his range that does fold. And like, yeah, I think the point that I wanted to make though is we just have to realize that there is a percentage of his range that is just never folding this turn. But it will have to fold the river. So I think that kind of makes me want to just triple off on this river. But like I said, it's not great because we do just run into a pair a lot. And now he bets this weird less than half pot bet. I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, I think it's like two things. I think it's thin value, or I think it's a cheap bluff. Obviously we can't call, so it becomes, do we check raise or do we just fold? I mean, again, it's dicey with no reads. I'm probably just gonna give up. I mean, we have like no blockers to anything other than draws, which is bad, obviously. The thing is, like, we can credibly rep a set here if we want to check raise. Because I think I would play a set, if I did have a check raising range on the flop, I would play a set like this almost always. Because, yeah, I would just assume that they have a draw a lot of the time, and I would want to check to let them bluff that river. Especially if I have a set, I block a lot of the value combos. Like, if we have a set of tens there, there's just not as much value he can have. So yeah, like, I think we could credibly rep it. But again, if he has 10x himself, he's just like probably never folding. Got about 6 minutes of footage left to get through. I know there's a couple more interesting spots for sure. Not not doing much with the king 8 there. Table 1 looks like a mandatory squeeze to me. You notice that hero is often checking to see how many tables players are playing. I think this is a very good strategy to try to quickly profile them. You can quickly, pick up a reg who is playing 4 tables or is hidden from the search feature compared to somebody who's 1 tabling. Okay, so we do squeeze. I think we can make it a little bit bigger, just again for straight up value. And this isn't really a hand that wants to go multi-way, especially out of position. So like picking up the money pre is pretty good. This is a horrible flop. It's not quite to the point where I wouldn't have a betting range. Like if that 7 of hearts was like a 10 or like maybe a jack, I'd probably check my entire range. There's just going to be not enough hands that I'm happy enough stacking off with. So I'd just check my sets as well. This isn't quite as bad because there aren't really as many draws and there aren't like the 7 and 9. Like they could have them, but I think it'd be more likely for somebody to call the 3-bet pre with 10s and jacks. So there's probably a little bit less sets in their range. And this is sort of a flop where I would be happy for getting in with like ace queen. The problem is there's 2 opponents left to act, and I don't even care about my ranges in this spot. Because it looks like one player is kind of fishy, so I'm just going to play this hand in a vacuum anyways, and with no backdoor draws, or I mean we have a backdoor straight draw I guess, but with no hearts in our hand, I think this is just a super easy, super standard check fold. I just don't expect any pair, any draw to fold really. And they have a lot of Queen X, and that card is pretty awful too. Like it gives us a gutter, but it does so much for their range. Like, yeah, we just have to fold. And they show up with under pairs, which is kind of unfortunate because we probably would have won it if we actually c-bet, but I mean, we got really lucky that that's what they show up with. Like, that's going to happen like once in a blue moon, I think. So I think our play was good there. I think it was best. This is another interesting spot on table 1 with pocket 10s. Obviously our decision is between 3-betting or calling whenever folding. I think these 2 players look pretty reggy. I'm just basing it on their stat size, and I think I've seen a couple of them on other tables. So that would probably lean my play towards just flatting. Yeah, I mean, the guy is opening under the gun. Obviously, I don't want to get the money in against him. Depending on who the player is that flatted there, he might not even have like a 3-betting range versus under the gun at all. Some players don't. So he could still be uncapped there. He could still have aces and back raise us. Also, it looks like there's a fishier player in the small blind. Somebody got mad at me for calling a shorter stacked player a fish in the first video, but I wasn't even harping on short stackers there. I just assume he's not a pro shorty based on the fact that he's showing his VIP status. So yeah, I would assume he's a rec and not a pro shorty or halfy, whatever you call him these days. So I'd probably like to call there to entice him in the pot. Let's see what hero does. Looks like he's going for the 3-bet. Jack 8 suited on table 4 should be an open, I think. So he does 3-bet. I don't think it's the worst play. Luckily for us, the rec comes along anyways. But like I said, I think we can't do much if we get 4-bet. And we can even have some reverse implied odds if we 3-bet and get called, because I think like Jacks Plus will call a decent chunk. 4 ways on this ISAT board, we could just close our eyes and c-bet and just hope to take it down. But yeah, 4 ways, I think it's probably pretty risky. I think somebody has an ace lot. Then the rec leads out for half his stack. It's actually close because like they will have lots of random stuff here, but I think when they call pre, like yeah, they're gonna be calling with a ton of stuff pre, but I think they're more likely to call with like lots of aces rather than like well, they might have like eight seven suited or like 8-9 suited, but I don't think they're gonna be calling like all offsuit combos of 8x, um, or like 4x or whatever. So I think, and then when they bet the size scene, like I don't think they're ever doing this with like air, like with like a Broadway hand. So I'd probably just sigh and give him credit here and just fold. Yeah, I think that's the right play. You never know. Like I wouldn't really hate. Like you could have like nines there, but like I don't know, or like sevens even. But I think we're kind of grasping at straws at that point. That can be a call on table two. I think it's a call. We're just getting a pretty good price with a wheel ace, a suited wheel ace. Has decent playability post flop. If it was like just heads up and the original opener was playing quite tight, I think I would probably find a fold. But yeah, three ways we're just getting a good price. And table one, this is an easy call. We're getting a great price with a pretty playable hand. We also look at our villain stats here, and he's opening. Looks like it's a small sample, but it looks like he's opening 27% under the gun. That's obviously crazy loose. That's pretty much most players cutoff open. So when we factor that in, it's almost like we're just defending the cutoff. Like it's pretty easy call. We have a gutter, but I think we just have to check fold this. We could possibly have no outs. It's not it's not even a gutter to the nuts or the nut straight. Um, I think we have showdown value on the river. Actually, I'd be tempted to check call even. Like somebody could be turning like pocket nines into a bluff. Though it'd be a little sketchy because they would probably play ace x that way a lot too. Table three. Let's just quickly look at this player. Looks like he's opening 30%. I mean, we can't even take these stats into consideration, to be honest. It's 70 hands. It's just not enough. Um, but yeah, it looks like he's opened a couple cutoffs before. Like what I do with tens here, it's largely going to depend on my history with the player, how loose they are, how light I think they'll stack off against, and also who's left behind me. Like, like this is a hand where I kind of want to be flatting because I think that most players just don't get it in crazy light in that spot, and we're not doing great against the get it in range. So I kind of want to flat. But if there's like two regs behind, I'd probably prefer three betting, so we don't get squeezed. And like, yeah, we can back raise, we can call, but it's not an amazing spot. Whereas if there were a couple of wrecks behind me, or even just one, I'd lean towards flatting for sure to just kind of keep them in the pot. 10-9 suited in the small blind on table four, easy open. Yeah, I don't think we should be folding that. Like super playable. We're not gonna get three bet that much. Spot on table three is kind of close. Yeah, to be honest, I struggle with these spots myself. About whether or not I should like just have a three betting range there, or if I should have a calling range, or if I should do a mixed strategy. Um, I think at six max, I kind of prefer just having a three betting range, I guess, in this spot, even against under the gun. It's close. I don't know. But this guy seems, again, pretty much no sample, but he looks like he's opening a lot, over 35 hands. So I think we could probably just straight up three bet that for value, expect to get called a lot. As played, yeah, standard check call on the flop. Turns tough. I mean, he goes ahead and bets almost pot. I mean, it looks like a standard call, but we got to realize if we're calling this, we're likely facing a river bet too. So it's not like just the 350 we're calling. It's usually going to be the 350 plus a river bet. You never know. He might check behind some hands. Um, his range is still pretty wide. There's a ton of draws out there, so it's kind of a hard spot. Um, Yeah, I'm just not sure. I mean, if he has we're not really beating a value hand at this point. Like I don't see him playing tens or nines like this. So I think he's either got like a semi bluff with the draw, or he just got his beat. So I don't mind folding. It's a tough hand to play, and it goes back to pre-flop too. It's just a pretty tough situation. Okay, looks like we're sitting out. Looks like that's the end of the footage. We made it. All right, well, yeah, let me know what you guys think of the video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure how many of these session reviews I'll do, but if you guys seem to like them, so I'll try to do a few, I guess, and I'll certainly be getting back to the hand of the week regardless. Let me know what you think of this webcam business too. All right, guys.